It's Friday here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm Chris Carter, joined by Ray Fittipaldo. Day one of Steelers training camp is in the books. We'll get you our thoughts and why, if you're a little worried about the offense, maybe you should take a chill pill real quick as they're getting acclimated to Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, and a whole bunch of new faces. We'll talk about that, who lined up where on the first day of training camp, and we'll also talk about the matchups that could be getting created by some of the new playmakers in the Steelers offense, all here in the North Shore Drive podcast. Let's get into it.
You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter.
Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm Chris Carter. He's Ray Fittipaldo. We're your Steelers writers, and as always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast, as well as the daily content that comes out from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And as always, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. Not only do they help you when you're injured in an accident, they help you when you need representation for workers' compensation. So call them today at 1-800-94-EDGAR. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Ray, the big highlight of the day yesterday, when you got it, when you look at it, has to be Aaron Rodgers' first pass. It's intercepted by Patrick Queen. The whole crowd goes, "Oh my goodness, I think Aaron Rodgers got intercepted. This is bad. This is terrible. This means the offense is going to stink." But as you and I know, and you've covered more training camps than I have, the defense always wins the early days in training camp. It's the natural thing, especially when they're the unit that's been together the longest. T.J. Watt, Alex Highsmith, Cam Hayward, Joey Porter Jr., even new additions like Jalen Ramsey. It's easier for them to fill in on defense in these early days while the offense is getting used to each other. And I think that people just need to, as Aaron Rodgers said many years ago, RELAX, relax.
Yeah, we didn't get that from Aaron yesterday, although he was not bothered by the interception. Chris, he had some good humor about it. I think his quote was, "Yeah, I'm going to throw some picks, but I'm going to throw some touchdowns too." So supreme confidence from Aaron. And yeah, that's going to happen. And you're right. You know, early in training camp, it almost doesn't matter how much experience is coming back on defense. It just takes time for offenses to come together. And I think we should expect that because, you know, even though Aaron Rodgers signed before minicamp, he didn't practice in minicamp. Even though he took the guys to Malibu, that's throwing on air, right? You're not going up against defenses that are throwing different looks at you. So it's going to take some time. I would be more concerned if this is happening, say, the week before the first preseason game against the Jaguars. I would maybe, you know, my antenna would be raised a little bit then. But yeah, for the first week or so of training camp, I think it's going to take some time for the offense to get it together.
And that's just totally natural. This happens a lot, especially, again, Aaron Rodgers is a new quarterback. No matter how experienced he is, he's a new quarterback with a new team on an offense with a second-year offensive coordinator trying to put things together, where he has several young offensive linemen, his number one wide receivers, also new to this team and new to this offense. He has two young guys behind him. There's a lot of new pieces that are flying in there, and it takes time to build that chemistry that we're talking about, especially when you want to have an offense that's as intricate as what the Steelers are trying to do. That's why they got Aaron Rodgers, so that he can get used to things, but that doesn't develop overnight. It takes time, and I think it might be a benefit to them that they're playing a defense like the Steelers that wants to kind of be aggressive in how they decide their coverage. Even in breaking it down, when talking about the interception, the Steelers had Jalen Ramsey go in motion with Calvin Austin from one side to the other. That kind of signals, they might be in man coverage or quarters coverage. So the quick underneath pass might be open. And when it wasn't, it was like, nope, it was actually cover 3. And Patrick Queen was able to fly to the sideline and pick the pass off. That's a normal that's a normal thing that a defense can do when it has the coverage talent that it has. And that's something that Mike Tomlin was really beating his chest about on Wednesday when we talked to him during his press conference, saying we have cover men and we're going to use those guys. And even when the ball doesn't go right to them, it leads to passes to other guys. So that's again why the defense kind of has a jump on things while the offense is figuring out, okay, when that happens, we're going to do this. You want them to kind of bump their head right now because this is how they learn.
And you want Aaron Rodgers to target DK Metcalf a lot, and he did that yesterday. They only tried to connect 4 times. They were 1 for 4 on those attempted passes, but that's what you want to see. And, for people who aren't in training camp, the Steelers ran 3 team periods yesterday, 1 7-on-7 drill. Combined, Aaron probably took 14 or 15 snaps in all those periods combined. He handed off about probably on half of those. So a lot of yesterday's practice was Aaron trying to get that chemistry with DK going. It didn't work out yesterday, but I think we're going to see that develop over time, right? Ongoing. We're going to see those reps add up. And then eventually Aaron and DK, hopefully are going to get on the same page. And, that's going to be a great connection for the Steelers. DK said it himself after practice. Aaron has had a lot of great receivers over the years, and I want to be the next one. So it's going to take some time. Just exercise a little bit of patience.
I agree too. And another thing that's also a factor here that's in favor of the defense, believe it or not having pads on helps them more, because especially with the pass rush, you had 2 passes that were swatted down, one by Cam Hayward, one by Derek Harmon, who I thought even without pads on had a pretty solid day. I was impressed by his get off on the ball and how quickly he was kind of pushing the pile. But for offensive linemen, if you haven't played football or flag football even, you don't know how hard it is to stop these big people that are coming at you as your offensive lineman with your hands and not grab their jerseys and you're just trying to do this. When they're not wearing pads, it's so tough to stop those guys from pushing forward. So all the advantages right now are to the defense as they're learning, as the offense is getting it together. And again, on top of the new players, you got young players in the offensive line that are also okay, we're learning Aaron's cadence. We're learning, when he sees something, we got to adjust, we have to see things and adjust with him and make sure that we're all on the same page. This is the stuff that takes time, but this is exactly what you're in training camp for. You're out here at these long summer days. I'm sure by the end of this week or the start of next week, there's going to be some camp fights because the offense and the defense are going at each other and they're talking smack, and that's how they like that. Mike Tomlin loves that competitiveness, that they go at each other. That to me is a big part of what training camp's about, and what kind of gets exciting to see develop day by day as we watch it here as journalists.
Yeah, that's when real training camp starts next Tuesday, Chris. These acclimation practices, it's almost like, okay, set the linemen aside. We'll watch them next week. Let's watch the defensive backs, how they move. Let's watch the receivers. Let's watch the running backs. I thought Kaleb Johnson really showed some burst going through the hole yesterday. Had a couple of really nice runs, and including a long run where he wasn't touched, and there weren't really guys in his area. So these acclimation practices are basically what we saw in OTAs. But I would watch. And I'm going to watch the skill guys more than the big guys here over the next couple of days.
Agreed there. That one long run that you're talking about, when he hit that hole and just how quickly he exploded, it made the crowd go, whoa, because it was noticeable how quick he accelerated, and to a point where you're just, you're not touching that guy.
It doesn't look like he runs a 4.55 or whatever his time at the combine was, right? We heard it after the draft. There's time speed at the combine and there's football speed. Kaleb Johnson has football speed.
Absolutely. We've been talking a lot about different players. In this next segment, we're going to talk about where we saw guys lining up, because that's a big part of a lot of the questions that we've had about this Steelers team on offense and defense. That's next here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. Today, they also help with workers' compensation. If you've been hurt on the job, you need to know who decides when you're better, who decides when your treatment's over, and who decides when your benefits are over. The answer might surprise you. It's actually the insurance company's doctors. They won't be on your side. You know who will be on your side? Edgar Snyder Associates. They've got your back. Call them today at 1-800-94-EDGAR. They'll fight for the workers' compensation rights that you deserve. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Call Edgar Snyder Associates at 1-800-94-EDGAR. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. Ray, let's talk about where we saw guys line up. Now, let's start in the secondary of the defense, because that was a big question that I thought we kind of got answered on the first day or on report day about where Jalen Ramsey will be when he was asked about, will you play safety? And he was like, I'll play wherever the coach is, but I'm being paid the money I'm paid to affect the game a little bit more. So he kind of hinted, I'm going to be closer to the line. Mike Tomlin said, where he won't say where he's going to be at, but he's like, just watch. But you saw a lot of him moving all over the defense. Primarily looked like he was the slot option that was taking away the motion guy, but then he got to drop into different spots. There were sometimes he was deep, but sometimes he's underneath. Ray, I think the way I'm going to describe it early, and tell me if I'm being a little too much here. I think he kind of has that Polamalu-ish feel where they want him to be in so many different places, but from a cornerback position, so that he is covering guys a lot more in man coverage, but they want offenses to have to guess, where is number 5? So it's not easy to just say, we're avoiding the right side or we're avoiding the left side, because they want you to keep guessing.
And that's what Mike Tomlin has been talking about really since they acquired him. He is their most versatile defensive back, and they are going to use him in a variety of roles. And Chris, some weeks it might be, hey, Jaylen, you're going to cover this tight end because we think that tight end is the best receiver on this offense. There could be other weeks, like when the Steelers play the Cincinnati Bengals, where they're going to say, hey, Jaylen, you got T. Higgins or you got Jamar Chase, and they're going to line him up and they're going to have him try to take that guy out of the game. So it's not going to be, just you're a slot corner. No, I mean, that would be basically be wasting this guy's talents. You're paying this is your highest paid defensive back, and you're going to use him appropriately. And in most weeks, Chris, he is going to be matched up in some form on the other team's best player or best players.
Right, and that's what you want. That's why you acquired him. Again, that's why they're paying him the money that they're paying him, around $19 million a year, right now. So I thought that was interesting. Juan Thornhill is at that free safety position, so the secondary kind of looks like Slay and Porter on the outside a lot. Ramsey kind of moving all over the place. Thornhill out there, but it was interesting to see when they brought Derek Harmon in. With Keanu Benton and Cam Hayward. Can you talk about what you saw there as far as the defensive lineman alignment and how they were moving those guys around?
Yeah, so there was a lot of speculation beforehand which defensive back is going to come off the field when they do go base, because they're going to have to go base defense against teams like the Ravens and some other teams that are going to be run heavy against them. And let's face it, if you're an offensive coordinator and you look at the way the Steelers finished last season, you're going to want to test them a little bit. And then, as you mentioned, Harmon comes onto the field, their number 1 pick, a guy they think is going to help them in that regard. And they brought Juan Thornhill, the free agent safety, off the field. So not a surprise. They weren't going to sit down one of their higher paid corners in that situation. So Thornhill comes off, and then they're going to mix and match in the back end. And I think you're going to see a lot of different scenarios when they are in base about who's got the deep half, how they're playing. So it's going to be interesting this camp to see how that unfolds as well.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting. I also thought it was interesting. You did see the edge rushers move around a bit. I saw Alex Highsmith line up like an A gap at one point, and I was like, whoa. I think the Steelers defense is going to be a lot more aggressive in how they set things up to try to confuse people. I think that they're going to be a team, a unit that isn't trying to sit into a mold that they are. They want chaos. They want things to come from different directions. But again, to achieve chaos, you have to be really good at certain things. You have to win one-on-one a lot with certain matchups. And that includes on the D line and in the secondary. Because if you're trying to do chaos, but you can't run man-to-man in coverage a lot, and you end up, getting exposed because this guy just can't run with this other receiver, that's how big plays happen. And then the chaos you wanted to create becomes chaos for you. And that's what you can't afford to happen. And then same thing for the D line. If you're trying to move guys around and be exotic and do all these things, but you can't stop the run, you're going to open up huge holes that offenses are just going to just create on their own. And I think the Steelers the last couple years, they haven't done that as much because they're like, hey, we can win out of our base formations a lot more. We can win with these guys, winning these one-on-one, but we need to create this chaos. But it has to come with winning those matchups, and that's a big reason why the Steelers have invested in the players they've invested in.
Well, very early in the first team period yesterday, Chris, I can't remember if it was the first, second, third snap, but Aaron Rodgers was watching the defense. T.J. Watt drops back into coverage very early. So again, you're not expecting that if you're an offensive coordinator or a quarterback, because for the last several years, the Steelers have, like you said, they've just lined up and said, our front four is better than your front. We're going to try to put pressure on you in that manner, a very basic manner. That hasn't worked, but now that they do have the guys to match up on the outside, you're going to see a lot of different stuff. You're going to see blitzes. You're going to see guys drop back in the coverage. You're going to see a lot of zone blitzes. So the Steelers defense, Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin, have a lot more flexibility in how they could operate.
Absolutely. I think that's a big part of what the Steelers want to do on offense and defense this year. We'll get into the offense a little bit more in a bit, but it's funny you brought up that yesterday in the post-practice video that you and Brian did that I was able to stand with you guys and record. You brought up the Rams interception where he dropped back into coverage. I just remember watching like one of the NFL midweek shows where they show you the sidelines and the interactions, and just seeing Sean McVay being like, Why is 90 off the ball? Why is he there? No. He got us. And it's just like, that's what they want to do with different players. If TJ Watt's doing that and Jalen Ramsey's doing that and Alex Highsmith's doing it, that's the stuff that wrecks a quarterback's brains, even good quarterbacks. That was Matt Stafford not too long after his Super Bowl. So that's what you want to be able to do to your Lamar Jacksons, to your Joe Burrows, to your Josh Allens, and maybe your Patrick Mahomeses. You want to be able to try to get them guessing. And I just think back to so many times last year in that Chiefs game. How many times did Patrick Mahomes get the ball 2 seconds, bam, ball's out here, 2 seconds, ball's out here, bam, because he was like, hey, they're in this alignment, we can pick on this guy. They're in this alignment, we can pick on that guy. But because the Steelers kind of had to work with knowing that, hey, we don't have the coverage man to run with all their guys, we got to kind of do this here, concede this there. They kind of had those issues, and good quarterbacks and great quarterbacks can pick at those when things are working, especially if their run game's going like the Eagles and Ravens had last year. But when you have this sort of chaos that you're moving around now, if like as we saw with Aaron Rodgers interceptions, if Patrick Mahomes assumes, they went in motion, they're back, and they're backed off, I got this quick pass to my number one wide receiver, and Patrick Queen jumps that. Those are the things that can fool those higher level quarterbacks, especially if you stop the run and force them into more of those third and longs.
Yeah, and just when you're worried about Jalen Ramsey and coverage, who's he lined up on, you could bring him off the edge as a slot corner on a blitz. He's a very physical player. He's good at doing that too. And all of a sudden, you got to pull the ball down and you go on to the next down. So, they're going to be a fun defense to watch if all these guys can stay healthy.
Absolutely. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about the offensive alignments and Jonnu Smith, who didn't practice yesterday, but why he plays a big role in that. I wrote about that for my Skinny Post. We'll talk about that next here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. But first, I want to remind you, the show is also brought to you by UFC Gym. If you're looking for a way to challenge your body and sharpen your mind, step into something more than just a workout. Welcome to the brand new Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy at UFC Gym. Here, it's not just about training. It's about living the values of honor, discipline, and respect. Whether you're a total beginner or leveling up your skills, you'll be guided through a structured program led by a third-degree black belt instructor who builds confidence, strength, flexibility, and real technique. Head down to the UFC Gym at the Waterfront or Market Square to learn about the exclusive 3-month introductory package today. That's only at UFC Gym Pittsburgh. We're also brought to you by Boss Menswear. Boss Menswear has reached icon status for its tailoring, but offers more than just the perfect suit. Their collections also feature casual and athleisure pieces, presenting a complete wardrobe for fast-paced modern lifestyles. Tailoring and sportswear are brought together in a look that is ready for whatever the day may hold. Be sure to check out Boss as they have now opened up in Ross Park Mall with a selection of menswear pieces. Check out Boss in Ross Park Mall today. Back here in the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. Ray, where the defense was lining up in a lot of different places, the offense was too, and that's even without Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith, day-to-day, we didn't get any, I think, injury indication of what it was. He was in the walkthroughs and the warm-ups, but then seemed to peel off right just before things got going for the Steelers. So we'll see if we see him out there today on the second day of practice of Friday. But one thing I asked DK Metcalf about, because Mike Tomlin talked about this on Wednesday, saying, hey, we like Jonnu Smith. We're going to line him up everywhere. We're not scared of making him in a non-traditional tight end role. He's like, I see him as a receiver, as a receiving player, less than just a tight end, specific. Oh, he can only line up off the line with his hand in the dirt or anything like that. And DK Metcalf said he likes that idea. He likes this because when you're going to move Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith around and create all these matchup questions, it's going to lead to, like with the defense, the chaos that you're looking to create. It's going to lead to defenses kind of having to say, hey, we have to honor all these different issues. And it's going to give DK Metcalf more one-on-one opportunities. And that's something big that you want for your top receivers so that they can go and beat the other team's cornerback to get open right away for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, one thing we didn't see yesterday were a lot of deep shots. We saw one in 7-on-7. It wasn't really a deep shot. It was more like 15, 20 yards down the field that Rodgers overshot Metcalf a little bit. But you're going to see that in the next couple of days too, right? If the Steelers are going to try to sit and step in front of some early throws, then Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers are going to have a counter there, and they're going to try to get DK Metcalf matched up one-on-one, which is also what you want to see during the regular season. And when you have guys like Jonnu Smith, who put up 88 catches last year, when you have guys like Pat Freiermuth that you have to account for in the middle of the field, there's only so many options that defensive coordinators can have there. And then you have Calvin Austin, shifty little player who can go get open underneath, So I think finally, Chris, the Steelers have players in the right position. Like we saw Calvin early in his career, like they were trying to run him deep down the field. Like that's not how that guy's going to be super effective on most occasions. So now you got your big fast receiver on the outside. You got Calvin to work underneath, and you have Smith to work underneath, and you have Pat Freiermuth in the middle of the field. So theoretically, if all these guys stay healthy, the Steelers are going to have an offense that is going to pose some problems potentially for some opposing defenses.
Right. And again, we're still just seeing half of that, right? Because the run game, as much as we're saying, hey, Kaleb Johnson looked explosive, we got to see the O-line blocking for that to actually manifest. But right now, the passing game is going to be very interesting to see how can the Steelers create their own mismatches in those situations. Because, look, when you have athletic tight ends, there's a reason why, like the Travis Kelce's and those types of guys, the George Kittles, they can be so tough to stick with because they are quick and they're big and they're fast and they can run good routes. Right. And when they do all those things, it's a select few guys that can stick and run with them very well. And because you may have good coverage guys in the cornerbacks, but sometimes they're not physical enough to stick with tight ends. So you need linebackers who can be physical with them, but they might not be fast enough to keep up with them. So that can be a unique problem. And if you're moving those guys around, that is creating a matchup issue for defenses that I think they can absolutely try to capitalize on. And again, with Aaron Rodgers, you're expecting like over time as they develop this chemistry where you're talking about, hey, they're hitting those underneath passes right now. They're going to find ways to turn that into some big plays where, hey, we're looking for this miscommunication. We're going to force the safety to say, hey, do you want to go here? Do you want to go there? And the time they make the mistake and say, we're covering this part of the field, whoop, all of a sudden, DK Metcalf gets a one-on-one down the sideline, and Aaron Rodgers is like, that's the one we've been waiting for.
Yeah, and just to bring up another offense that runs a lot of 12 personnel, you look at a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, if Travis Kelce is really hurting a defense, then it's like, okay, we got to double him, or we got to bracket him, or we got to do something. And then all of a sudden, Noah Gray, he's not unknown now, but he's a really good player now because Patrick Mahomes knows how to distribute the ball. So if the Steelers can recreate that in some fashion, and I'm not comparing Pat Freiermuth to Travis Kelce, I'm not doing that, but if they can get him to win in certain situations and teams have to start getting concerned about him, that's when you pop it off to Jonnu Smith or other guys underneath, and boom, you have an easy 15, 20 yards.
Absolutely. And also it's all the positions, right? Because there were plenty of times I saw Kenneth Gainwell lining up out wide and kind of being in this move. And that's the new running back that they got from the Philadelphia Eagles. I think Arthur Smith is experimenting a lot with right now with what all these different looks that he's drawn up. He said, hey, you know what? We got guys. And Darnell Washington talked about this in mini camp when I asked him. I was just like, hey, how have you felt about like how they're using? He's like, I'm lining up in positions that I didn't normally line up in. So even before they officially had Jonnu Smith, this was something they wanted to be part of the offense. I think that's going to be a fun part of training camp. Again, all these new things that are working in with new players from all different positions. It's going to take time for it to come together, but this is what we're here to do, to document, is to check to see how it's developing. And if it comes together, it could make for something that the Steelers fans really haven't had a chance to see for some years now, as they've been dealing with young quarterbacks and more basic offensive looks.
Yeah, I really like Gainwell too yesterday. He flashed a little bit. You see how quickly he gets to the hole. So I don't want to say he was underutilized in Philadelphia, because how could you not utilize Saquon Barkley when you have a guy like that? But I think Gainwell's going to have a role on this team. And one thing that's noticeable, again, no pads, but the speed of the running backs, the quickness of the running backs compared to what we're used to with Najee Harris. You got Gainwell, you got Kaleb Johnson, you got Jaylen Warren. Those 3 backs are pretty quick and or fast. So that's definitely a different dynamic to this offense that we're going to see develop here in training camp.
Absolutely. Ray Fittipaldo, Jerry Dulac, Brian Batko, and myself all will be in Latrobe for training camp. We'll be covering the second day of practice here at Saint Vincent College. If you're around, say hi. We won't bite. We are always happy to meet our fans. Thanks again for tuning into the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. This has been your Friday episode. As always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes. And also be sure to read us at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com. And hey, throughout the weekend, don't think just because this show's not on that there's not content. We'll have daily recaps coming to you from Ray, from Jerry, from Brian, from me about what we're seeing in practice every day. So stay tuned for all of that here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette on your favorite podcasting app or on YouTube. Thanks again. We'll see you soon right here on the North Shore Drive podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.